So AI is making everyone productive and it's making things much faster to do than ever before. But speed is one thing, but how can we use AI to become more productive? Well, one of the things that we're going to explore in this video is how to make a command center, or otherwise kind of a morning dashboard. So you can see what's happening across the board across all your apps. Think of a dashboard as your central command. You show up every morning, you see what's happening, what emails you got, what Slack messages you get, what event calendars you got going on, and you're going to put all this together before you even start your day. And the great thing about this is that it lets you budget your time more efficiently. And the perfect tool to get this all done is Claude Cowork. Claude Cowork allows you to connect to multiple apps through something called connectors. This allows you to bring in data so you can display it in your command center. Things are moving fast, information is always flowing, so you really want to be on top of things every day. So stay tuned because I'm going to show you how to do that step by step. Now, if you like this video, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos like this. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. So we're learning how to build a command center. I'm going to show you what it looks like before we even get started, just so you can see what I've built. So this is a command center. This was all built in Cowork. And it's a demo, right? I just want to show you guys it. At the top here, I have times for different cities, and it's live, right? It's running. So I know what time it is. Over on the left-hand side, I got my calendar running, and you can see I've set it up so I can see if there's conflicts. That's the reason I put these. I've actually put some stuff in there so that I can show you that you can actually set these things up just so you're aware. So the idea about a dashboard is to give you a good picture of your day when you first start, okay? You can set up any way you want. It can be at night before you go to bed or whatever, but let's just focus on the morning kind of command center, what that would look like. I have Slack here set up, and it's set up to what messages that have recently come in. I also have email set up as well. Now, I've connected to another email just for privacy and stuff, like they don't have certain emails, but it's set up so that you can bring in emails and I can take a look at it. And I'll show you in another dashboard later that I also built that you see some emails. So you can look at your emails as well. And then here, I also have LinkedIn job. Now, in my last session that I did yesterday, someone mentioned like, can I see like LinkedIn job posts that just came in? And I'm going to show you that, of course you can. We're going to set that up as well. And so here are the last LinkedIn jobs that was posted the last 7 days. And I'm able to see this. So if I'm applying for AI engineering roles and I want to stay on top of that, here's, some that just came up on LinkedIn, right? It was sort of scraping LinkedIn in a way. Okay. So that's what we're kind of trying to build here. Let's move on. Now, why is this important? So this information is obviously available anywhere you want, right? You can open up your phone, open up LinkedIn, go to the job section, you can find it. You can go open Slack, you can open email. But as you can see this picture, everything is scattered, right? So wouldn't it be nice if we can have one center, one command center where everything is there? And so you just open it up and you get to see things and you stay on top of a bunch of things in a matter of flash, right? That's the idea that we're chasing here, okay? So today's agenda, I'm going to talk about how it works, right? And then we're going to do a quick Claude Cowork intro because obviously it's important for half the audience in the room here. And then we're going to set up as well and how to set up. So I'm going to talk about something called skills. If you haven't heard from it, it's very important in this situation. And then I'm going to show you a couple of builds. I already showed you one of them, but you'll see kind of how I got to that point. Okay. Now, if you do have questions, feel free to drop in the chat. I will pause somewhere sort of like halfway or something, answer some questions, and we'll take up more at the end as well, okay? All right, so we're going to start with module 1, theory, okay? Okay, let's talk about how it works. So Cowork, I guess looks like this when you open it up. It's a desktop app, and you can basically work like in any kind of desktop app program on it. And you can do a bunch of things on it. You can actually work with it on the Claude chat interface, like you've probably done on the web interface, where you open up, you type it in the browser, and you open up this app version that is just downloadable. You just go to Claude Anthropic's website, and you download it. Gives you all three: Claude Code, Cowork, and all in one place. So it's kind of fun in that way. We're going to be working in the Cowork tab. And the cool thing about Cowork, just to let you know, is that it works out of your desktop. So you're going to set up a folder on your desktop, and then you're going to tell Cowork, okay, this is my designated folder. I want you to work out of this. And every time it produces something like a file or whatnot, it will save it inside that folder so that you can also upload as much files and information as you want. You're not sort of limited to what you get on the chat interface online version to like 20 file maximum or 30 megabyte per file maximum upload, right? Because that's working through the cloud versus this is working off of your desktop. So one of the key things to keep in mind. And it's also sort of designed to be a little bit dummy proof in the sense that because it's working on desktop, there's some risk people worry about, oh, is it going to mess around? Is it going to delete some files I don't want? Well, they really engineered in such a way that it can't do that. If it wants to do anything, it's going to ask for your permission, right? It's very strict in the way it works. As opposed to Claude Cowork, which is for developers, that is a little more easygoing, and you can actually set up certain permissions that it just runs on its own, right? And that's a lot of things that developers do is that they create these agent loops, they call them, and it'll just run for like 24 hours doing a bunch of things, right? So that's the cool thing about Cowork. And so that's a quick intro. Let me jump back to the slide here. So with Cowork, we're going to use two of its capabilities to build this command center. One of them is called connectors. Cowork has this ability. Uh, it's sort of like a harness. They call it a harness, but one way to think about it is sort of like it's like a vehicle. And then the large language model is the engine. So in this case, I'm working with Opus 4.8, which I would recommend for this type of task, okay? Which is their highest model so far because Fable 5 got banned by the US government recently. So anyway, we're going to connect Cowork with other applications like Gmail, your calendar, like Google Calendar. You can connect it to stocks, like apps that monitor stock. So that's one of the capabilities that's very important to draw information that it may not exist in its training data or may not be accessible through the internet, right? That can be sometimes an issue. So over in the customize here, when I select it, I can go to up here, connectors down here. And as you can see, I've connected a bunch of them, but then you go to add, and then you go browse connectors. And as you can see, there's a bunch of connectors here, right? And this is one of the big keys to draw data from, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other feature that we're going to work with is called live artifacts. Now, if you've heard of artifacts, this is a fairly new version of artifacts. Artifacts is basically these 3 points that I mentioned. They're just like HTML. They can be like just because you can build little websites with Claude. You can ask it, hey, I'm looking to build a little website like this. You should have this on it, and it'll make you an HTML, and then you can open up on the browser. That's called an artifact. Live artifacts are interactive. As you saw from the one I showed you, the clock was moving. You can refresh it, and it'll bring in new data. Is a lot more, as I said, interactive, and it can also dynamically query these third-party tools that I talked to you about. Okay, that's another thing about it. And so as a result, you're able to build this dashboard that will live on its own tab within the Cowork space. Here it is right here. The command center that I showed you, it lives by itself right here. So anytime I want to open it, I can just click this and it'll open it. In fact, it'll refresh with some fresh data, okay, for that particular. Now, the way you set it up is always going to be the way you want it. So for instance, emails, obviously you don't want to look at the same dashboard every time you want it to update. So you're going to set up some sort of refresher that brings in new information, like if you got new emails and stuff like that. That way you can stay up on top of it. Don't jump between, 10 different apps, okay? So these are the two features we're going to work with. And then the next thing is very important is we're going to build on top of that with something called skills. And I'll talk to you guys more about what skills are, but just remember, Claude is this vehicle, and then we're going to attach these powerful things to it. One of them is connectors. they're going to be live artifacts, and then these skills that are kind of like workflows. They're repeatable workflows, right? Because if you think about it, what is a dashboard really? If the dashboard is gathering emails and bringing it in, it's pretty much doing the same thing over and over and over, right? So this is a workflow, right? The definition of a workflow. So essentially, a skill is a workflow that we're going to build, and it's going to be able to use that. The reason we do it is because if we ever want to make a change to our dashboard, right, we can go into the skill and we know where that information lives, and we can make modification to that particular skill, right? And if you ever want to build another dashboard in the future that has similar properties to the old one, you can grab that skill and bring it in. So, you know what I mean? There's some modularity between these things, okay? So that's the key thing about it. All right, I'm going to move on here. All right, this is my little blurb on Cowork to kind of help you get set up. When you install it, okay, you're going to go over here. You're going to go, just click your name. You're going to go to settings. There's a bunch of things that you can do here. Over in Cowork, right? When you click, you're going to see something called global instructions. Um, Claude has this capability for you to give it instructions at various levels. I'll explain to you those other levels in a second, but this is the global instructions. This is the set of instructions you would give Claude to work across everything that you do, right? If you wanted to write a certain way, if you wanted to create files a certain way, and I'll show you some of the things that I've done, right? Stay organized, name new files using this format. Okay, it will follow these instructions. I like this example to kind of talk about. It's like, if when you get a job at a new place, they're going to get HR gives you sort of a set of instructions saying, okay, you need to come to work at this time. You can't leave before this time. You only get this many sick days. It's just set of ways that, that the person should work. In the same way, treating Claude Cowork like an employee, like a worker, you want to give it a certain set of instructions so it follows that every time. Okay. And so when you start Cowork, it automatically reads this every single time. Okay. So you want to keep it not too long, right? Just important stuff that you want to address. And because remember, every time it reads these things, it uses up tokens, right? And then over here, you have usage, right? It'll tell you how much you've used. Now, remember, if you use the more powerful models, this usage increases faster, right? And then there's some reset times that happens. You can, in about an hour and 11 minutes, I'm going to get a reset and I can, get more tokens that I can use, okay? So this is another feature that you should know about. And the other thing is folder structure. So I talked to you about that global instructions. We call that the global Claude MD. It's a term that comes from Claude code, actually, but Cowork is set up a little bit differently in the sense that their main global Claude MD lives where I just showed you, okay? But we're going to have this root folder. And by the way, you don't have to do this, but I highly recommend this because it's going to keep things organized. I'll show you how I have set up. Here is how I've set up. So this is for demo purposes, obviously. This is my Claude Cowork root. It's the same as what I just showed you here. And then inside it, I have these workstations, okay? And inside these workstations, you have projects. A workstation represents a category of work that you would be doing, that you want to organize those particular projects under. So maybe if you're doing marketing, you might have a marketing workstation. If you're doing finance, personal finance, which you can do, right? You can have that workstation. And then the individual projects that you would do under it, you would put them under there, right? So that way, if you ever need to reference them, you can do that. The other thing cool about it is that if you want to ever jump between a certain folder, right, and draw maybe skills or other types of documentation, it's a lot easier to do that in Cowork. Obviously, you have to ask permissions, right? This is, as I mentioned, but that's the key thing. And the cool thing about it is that you can keep certain files very organized. Remember, Cowork works out of a folder. So if you have specific files inside it, you can read it. You can actually tell it to read it. One of the files that's very important is called this Claude MD. Remember earlier I mentioned that there's these global instructions that we just looked at, right? Well, you can actually have project level instructions in there as well. Because if you're working on, let's say coding work and you want a certain type of instructions for it to code a certain way, or if you're doing financial assessments and you want the data to come out looking a certain way, well, or even let's say metrics, right? You want the data to show in kilograms versus in pounds. You know what I mean? These are kind of things. Well, you can put that in the Claude MD as instead of instructions related to your project, and therefore you separate out the instructions that are in the global and this, so that you can not only save tokens, but not feed it information that it doesn't need to know. Like if you're working on marketing, you don't need the instructions about write things in imperial versus metric, right? That doesn't, it may not matter in that situation, right? So you'll keep these in there. That's what Claude MD is. And then skills, as I mentioned earlier, these workflows are also going to live in your project as well, because you'll use it to build the dashboard. Now, in our particular situation, and this is very specific to the situation, we're not going to use a CloudMD. We're not going to need it. And you'll see why in a second, okay? But I just put it here just so you guys can see what that looks like. So when I go into this folder of my command center, I go here, command center demo, that's my project, right? And then I go inside, as you can see, I have all my skills, which I'll show you guys later, that all built out here, okay? So moving forward, all right, we're going to go into setup now. I'm going to take a pause here and look at some of the questions. What level of license you're going to have Cowork? Yeah, so you need oh, it's a good question. I don't know if the free tier, no, I believe you need the next level, the pro level, which is like just the next step up from the free tier. Um, Yes, yes. I'm not exactly sure what the time is because it's, things constantly are changing. Like, so I don't know what it is right now, but that sounds about right. Um, and then it says, what ways to avoid optimum use of tokens? Oh, that's a whole lecture on its own. I will say that right now. Um, there's a lot of things that you can do to help do that. One of them ways, very important, is to control what's inside your Claude MD files, as I mentioned right now. That's a key because these are things that it reads automatically. I would say keep it to 200 lines. That's sort of standard across the board. And try to be conservative on some of the tasks you do. Memory, these are a little bit going out of scope what we're doing, but I would recommend another thing to look into is memory. I've done sessions in the past on this subject, and when you guys get the recording link for this, you can actually access some of the lectures I've done in the past that go into memory and stuff as well. Okay. Uh, and yeah, there it is. Is project the same as the GUI project? Um, yeah, so this is a little bit getting out of here, but we have something called projects here as well. They're a little bit different. Yes. I won't go into it. Just maybe if we have some time, I'll talk about it. So I'll make a note and I can talk about that later, but it's going to a little bit deviate from what we're talking about right now. But yes, there is sort of this idea that I mentioned right now, projects where everything is living in the folder. And I think that's what you're referring to. And then there's something called projects here. That's the kind of the GUI project, something Anthropic has set up, and we'll talk about that in time. But you can use both, by the way. There's reasons why you should use this one, though. You can I'll talk about that. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to kind of connecting. Now, when we talk about connectors, I'm going to split them up into two different categories because it's very important for our particular use case. We have apps, right? This is information that you can get, Claude can access immediately, very easily. Like for instance, Gmail, calendar, Slack, those things that I showed you on the dashboard earlier. Those things are very easily accessible, and it does that through something called MCP. So Model Context Protocol. It's a new term to you. I put a little definition above the top. It just means model means LLM, large language model. Context is understanding, and protocol is a standard. So it is a way for LLMs to understand data coming in through these third-party apps, and they've standardized it so that no matter what these tools are connecting to, in this case which are connecting to Cowork, but let's say it's connecting to one of ChatGPT's models, like OpenAI's models, right? It can also follow through the same protocol and connect fairly easily, right? So it's actually also developed by Anthropic as well. So and other tools as well, by the way. So that's how these things are connected. And this is fairly easy to set up. As I showed you, you just go to customize, connectors, and browse, and you find Gmail, and then you connect it. You see I'm already connected. It'll set up and it'll just ask you for authentication for you to log into Gmail, and you set up and you're good to go. There's one that's more complicated, which are called scrapers. And I did a session yesterday on this. So I would recommend when you get the link, you can watch that recording. That one was called more depth into like how to set up Cowork to your personal web scraper. But just to give you a general idea of what the scrapers are, is that you can scrape the web with Claude Cowork by connecting to certain apps that allow that to happen. So some of the apps that, for instance, I've listed here, Appify, can help you do that. Appify, as I open it up right here, has a library of scrapers that people have built. So you got for instance, I'm just going through here to show you Google Maps extractor, Instagram scraper, right? Remember, data is the king here, right? So if you need a dashboard for a certain amount of type of data on it, you may need to scrape certain places, right, to get that because there might not be an app that allows you. Right now, you can't connect to Instagram through this method, the apps method, and get everything that you need, right? So you might need to go through a different route to do that, okay? And so, there's the LinkedIn job scraper, right? That is here, right? And on top of that, Appify has built something called Actors, where sort of they've built these like workflows that have a bunch of different things built inside it to do a certain task very efficiently, right? Google Maps scraper does a lot more than just those simple scrapers, okay? So they also have this. And the cool thing is that Claude knows about this. So once you connect to Appify, it knows about all these actors. It knows all about the app store. So it can help you make a decision in terms of how to extract the knowledge that you want. And even in my case, I tried it where like it connected to this actor, it tried it, it failed or didn't get the data. It's like, I'm going to try this other one. Would you be okay? Yeah, no problem. Go try this other one. Okay. Just remember, there's a cost associated with these. Okay. It's pretty minimal, but it can add up. Okay. Versus this is free, right? That's the information coming in. There's another tool called Composio, and I want to mention this because it's important because you may need to connect to certain apps that are not here, okay, or other scrapers. Okay, so for instance, we have SERP API, which is really good at scraping Google Maps information. Okay, and then we have something called Firecrawl, which is good at scraping websites. Okay, so an example would be like, let's say you want to stay on top of changes happening on like a news site, right? And so you can have this Firecrawl run, and so it'll tell you what was scraped, maybe news that maybe just like got released. You can stay on top of things much quickly, right? So Composio is there to connect to things that is not necessarily accessible by a Claude Cowork or may not even exist as a sort of a scraper thing over here. It's mostly for connecting to apps, actually, if I would be honest. These are built scrapers, these are apps. So you can see Notion here. Obviously, Cowork has Notion, but for instance, Cowork does not have Google Sheets. It's a very specific product of Google, right? You can connect to it through Composio, and then you can do a bunch of things. As an example here, I can grab this information, I can put it in Airtable, I can put it in Google Sheets, I can utilize Composio to do that, right? So it's about giving Cowork a bunch of other capabilities that it just didn't have before. Just go scroll down, you can see there's HubSpot. If you're using HubSpot and you want to get that information showing on your on your command center, that's what it is. If you have a YouTube channel, you can see what kind of data you can extract from YouTube, right? If you new subscribers, comments, stuff like that, right? And so, I mean, just on and on and on, right? Like, it's just look at this. I'm only on like maybe 10% of the way, not even, and it just keeps going, right? So you use mods, right, for SEO information, right? So, like again, you have to play around with this, decide what works for you. But the workflow I'll show you is pretty standard, okay? So that's everything. I don't see any questions. I'm going to keep going, guys. Okay, all right. Let's talk about skills. I told you I was going to talk about it. It may be a new term for some people. I got these like little, um, people here at the bottom. They're like painters because I want you to think about them as like workflows that a worker would do, right? Think about a painter. They have a procedure that they're going to implement when they come and paint your house, right? And it's pretty much the same procedure. The painter doesn't show up at your house and be like, okay, I'm going to invent a new way to paint every new custom. No, they set up a procedure, to learn it, and they just execute on every single time. So it's the same idea, right? A skill for instance, determining time, like I showed you on my dashboard. I had Moscow, I had Shanghai, I had all these different times. We can build a skill around that. Okay. It is a prompt, but it's a prompt that you can then store somewhere that you can modify anytime you want. So if I ever want to go back and make a change on the type of city that is showing time. For instance, I'm in business, I'm doing, global business, and we have a new customer now, for instance, in London. I don't have London on the sheet, right? I can go in and I can get Claude to update the skill, okay, to then have this new time on it. And then I can say, okay, now that I have this new time, can you update my command center with this new thing? Rather than going into the command center itself and getting Claude to fix it. Do you know what I mean? Coming back to the question of like, how do I save tokens? That's one way to save tokens, right? Because if you tell Claude to go and completely look at the entire command center build, all the code and everything that went to it, and then make the change, you're going to use up a lot more tokens than if you just went to where the source of the problem is and you fix it. So building things in components is a big thing when it comes to saving tokens, and also building something that you understand how it works to some degree, right? I'm going to show you an example of a skill. Okay. This is the Slack inbox check skill that I put together. You might be wondering, did I sit down and type this all out? Not really. Um, uh, Look, building skills is kind of like a bit of an art form, to be honest with you. You have to play with it. You have to understand how it makes it. But once you kind of understand it, it does get a lot easier. But it does take a little bit of practice. Now, what Anthropic has done is they build this. They build a skill to build skills. So you can actually ask Claude, "Hey, I'm looking to build this kind of skill. Okay, can you build it for me?" And you'll see it will call on its skill creator skill that's built inside it. Okay, I'm saying skill too many times. But anyway, this is what it uses to then go build it out for you. Okay, but look, it follows a particular workflow, set of instructions to build that skill. You don't have to know what it is. You can sit down and read through it if you're interested. But what you can do is once it's done that, you can then go back and read through it and make any changes, for instance, that you want, right? This is one way to get started to build a skill. But once you get an idea about how it works, how Claude works, and you can start doing it on your own if you like, and a little bit more get creative with it as well. Okay, but that's that. Okay, so that's what it is. And once you build these individual things, okay, again, I made one for time, I made one for email, one for calendar. Even if it's simple, I recommend you turn it into a skill and save it. And once it does, it'll just save it as a file, .skill file inside your folder. And this .skill is a new type of extension that allows AI tools to read these very efficiently. Um, Under the hood, there's .zip files. So if I were to take this and put .zip, it'll turn into a zip folder, and then if you double click, if you extract it, you can actually read it. Right now, if I double click on this, I cannot read this. It's not meant for humans to read it. It's just designed for AIs. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind, is to just, once you want to read through it, that's how you got to do that. Okay. And then obviously I mentioned we're not going to use a Claude MD because the instructions don't really apply in this situation. We don't really need to use up tokens in any case. We're going to really just use prompting, right? Make their skills and then feed it to Claude and be like, look, these are my skills. Can you build out my dashboard? And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But I want to talk to you guys about this because the idea of building skills came from something called prompt engineering, which is pretty much obsolete now. So I mentioned this in the last seminar. If you see a course or some certificate, for $5,000, which is what they are nowadays, we're going to teach you prompt engineering, you might as well burn your money because this stuff is going out. This stuff is coming in, and this is how the industry is. It moves quickly, and a lot of times, these institutions and stuff that are making these courses, they just can't keep up with it. So learning how to build skill is the new skill. And I predict, I'll be honest with you, I really think is that this is getting so much traction over the last 2, 3 months that it's become the foundation of something called loops. Um, just to open up something here for you guys. This is called Loop Library. If you want to just look through it, I won't spend too much time on it, but loops are for code for developers, and you can have multiple agents. So we're working with one agent right now. You can have multiple agents with specific set of instructions for them and how to work and how to do things. And you create these loops. And so people build these loop libraries for it for them to work together and all produce a certain outcome. Okay. And so this is another exciting area that things are headed, but it's based on the foundation of skills. Okay. So look into this, get familiar with how to build these. I really think this is what I was going to say. I really think that in the future, there will be a specific role for someone to come in and either build skills or modify skills or make sure that agent skills are able to communicate with one another, right? Like interact with one another and make it easier in a company. I see clearly. I see this as I think the industry is just like as a society, we're not there yet. But as these things become more and more integrated in our society, skills are a very efficient way to set. Because for the most part, a company, what is a company? Is made of a bunch of workflows. That's what a company really is if you distill it down. So it just only makes sense that if you're going to have AI agents doing things in an organization, you're going to have to make skills, and then you would have someone to manage them and make sure that they're running, or you might build AI agents to manage them as well, right? These are all the things that could happen. Okay, so that's my thing on that. And I showed you guys how to set up the folder already. And so how it works is we're going to take our skills, we're going to throw it in our folder, okay, that we built. And remember, with Cowork, you're working out of a folder anyway, so you don't even have to do that. You just connect your folder, and then as you're working, you can ask it to kind of drop it in. And one of the things, and every time I think of something, I try to mention it, is that if you want to save tokens, another way is, for instance, if I'm making this skill, I'll go through a process with Claude to build it. Okay. And what am I doing? I'm describing what I want. Maybe I've already thought it out, what that workflow might look like. And then I will then say, this is the skill I want to build. Can you connect to these tools and let me know what kind of a response, what kind of output you can create? Once I'm happy with it, then I can turn into a skill, right? I can just ask it, and then it'll use this skill, creative skill to do that. And then I can review it myself and, you know what I mean, double check it. So there's a bit of a work here, but it can all be done within one session here. But then if you're doing another skill, I would recommend to open up a new one, right? Go do a new task and do it again. The reason being is that every time you interact with this, if you're still within the same session, it's going to read the memory, and that's token usage, right? So if you switch into another one, it starts fresh again, and it's not feeding the old conversation back into me. You'll notice that if your conversation gets too long, Cowork would automatically compact. You'll actually spend like 30 seconds to a minute compacting the conversation, and then it can continue because it's being overloaded with all this memory of conversation. Okay, so that's another way, to save tokens as well. Okay, so once we do that, we connect Cowork as well with all our tools, right? You can connect it from the scraper side, as you saw from the LinkedIn job postings, that was through a scraper, right? Slack and stuff like that. And then you can ask it to build your command center with live artifacts. So give you an example here that I can show you how this conversation for today started. I also did this. I wanted a design. I didn't just want it to figure out on its own. So I went to Figma, can do that as well, and just design the layout of how your command center is going to look like. Figma is not the only option. You can do a bunch of things, but that's one way to do it. I took these icons from just the internet, and I laid it out like this just to show you guys, and you can see looks pretty close, eh? I mean, I could have played around with it, right? And say this and this and that, but it's pretty close. It's got Slack, it's got calendar, right? I wonder if you put in the right, yeah. Okay, you just switch these two out, but that's okay, right? Um, and then going back to this, and then we can have the command center all set up. And going back to that conversation, I'm going to show you. So I kind of did this. Now I started originally with the weather. I wanted to see if I can get the weather, and it turned out the weather situation was going to be a little bit challenging. I had to connect to a certain API, sign up for them, pay. Some of the stuff you may need to subscribe to, okay? Some connectors. That's up to you, right? That's if you like that kind of thing and you're okay with it, no problem. But I started with this kind of prompt. I can share this prompt, but again, the idea was like I have these skills. I've already built them. I've loaded it to you. This is my design. Can you build? And I asked it, can you make me a plan first, okay, of how that might look, and let me know if there's any issues. And you went through the process of seeing these things. I actually had a little bit of trouble in the beginning with the way that we built originally the skill for the LinkedIn job description uh, or the job scraping. So anyway, you can go back and forth doing all kinds of things, and eventually it built it, and you got, you go through a bit of conversations with it, right? Made changes. Um, this is obviously some boring stuff because see, I had the conversation. You could not load the jobs because of what happened when I did the skill on its own, it was perfectly loading the jobs. But in this situation, it was a little challenging because remember, with with this dashboard, I got to be able to refresh it, and then it goes back and looks for more like the recent 7-day job. So if it's tomorrow I'm refreshing it, there might be some new jobs that might pop in. Right now I put 10 here, but for you, you might want to show like 30 or something, right? So this way, you needed to connect things a little differently. Now, obviously, it's doing a lot of coding in the background, right? And so at the end, you got this HTML file that you see here. Okay, and you got the companies and things like that. Okay, so that's a quick example of how that might look. And let's go back to the slides. And yeah, that I showed you this use case. And so I'll show you the other use case as an example, just to show you that you can have like customized themes in there as well. So as you saw, this one, I asked it to make it sort of in the Anthropics theme. Um, it's very minimalistic. It's clean and everything like that. Here's another one, Command Center. This is sort of a space type of, and you can see you just updated. It just updated. It was a different set of information. It just got updated because it's connected to my inbox on a different inbox. Okay. Um, and then it's also connected to events. Now I made a difference in today's missions, tomorrow's missions. So I can stay on top of it. And the bottom, I have stock information. But as you can see, Tesla, through the connector that I've set up, it requires a premium plan. So this is why I kept this to show you is that not Tesla, sorry, SpaceX. And if you invested, you lost money, I apologize. I'm with you. Um, anyway, so premium plan required, but these other ones are also available. So the final thing I will say about these dashboard is that they will not run when Cowork is closed. You need to have Cowork open, and as you can see here, there's this reload button, and you can refresh it, and it'll refresh and do like fresh information. That's one of the limitations of it, is that it may not just automatically just populate as it goes. You may need to do a refresh. So if minute 0, I got an email and I looked at it and everything's fine, and then in minute 10, I got an email. Well, I'm not going to know about it until I refresh it. Okay, that's the only downside of this. And maybe they're going to improve it. Remember, this is the early days. I think it's only been out for like a month or so. There's this kind of artifacting. But yeah, I would highly recommend you set it up in the way that might work for you. I'm sure there's certain things that you care about that you want to look at. And yeah, that's it, guys. And so that's the end of the presentation. I hope it was clear. These skills that I made, I will email that to you if you guys want to use it for your own particular command center. And I will also usually package all these in a zip folder, and then you can then look at some of the screenshots that I've taken here of this as well as relatable, and then also the recording as well. So everything will come out in a link, and you can just get them and review it there. Okay.